Mind caught between thesis and antithesis. Hello, and thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. My experience revolves around a profound sense of immersion in what I perceive as reality. So immersive, in fact, that I struggle to maintain neutrality when considering alternative ideas such as simulation theory or other countercultural views. There's a part of me that desperately wants to remain open-minded. I want to stand firmly between the conventional belief that the world is exactly as we see it, and the radical notion that we are living in some programmed construct. Yet, time and time again, I find myself slipping into what I can only describe as a powerful hypnotic immersion in popular beliefs. It's as though the default perspective on life, the mainstream worldview shared by the majority, has a gravitational pull that reels me back in, no matter how earnestly I try to resist. This has left me questioning, would a truly real world so forcefully mandate a particular set of beliefs, or would it permit me to choose freely whatever I want to believe, without this constant sense of being pushed or coerced? The question might sound a bit unusual, but it's rooted in a deep philosophical puzzlement. Whenever I attempt to practice Cartesian doubt, where I systematically question everything I think I know, or engage in a bit of self-hypnosis, autohypnosis, I initially feel I can hold both the thesis, that reality is real, as we typically understand it, and the antithesis, that everything might be a simulation, at bay, a simulation. My goal is to remain neutral, to withhold judgment entirely until I can gather more insight. Yet, inevitably, I slip right back into the everyday assumption that we live on a planet orbiting a star, that the universe is billions of years old, and that everything we do is governed by physical laws. The power of popular consensus is formidable, almost as if it has a hypnotic quality. At times I wonder, is it that this set of beliefs truly reflects reality? Or could it simply be that the entire framework is so well ingrained that I can't escape its hold? The constant immersion and the dream analogy. One of the analogies that haunts me is the experience of dreaming. When I dream at night, I am completely immersed in whatever scenario my unconscious mind creates. The moment I am in that dream, I take it as real. There's no second guessing unless I happen to become lucid. I might be walking through a city that defies the laws of physics, or talking to people who passed away years ago, yet I treat it all as perfectly normal. Only when I wake up do I realize that it was all a construct of my mind. This begs the question, might my waking life be similarly immersive, so much so that I never realize it's also a dream of sorts, whether it's a simulation or some other construct? From this standpoint, I compare the dream world and the waking world. In both, there is a sense that I am pretending everything is real. While dreaming, I pretend wholeheartedly that the dream events are my reality. Confrontations, celebrations, odd occurrences, all of it. Then I awaken, only to slip right back into the cultural presuppositions that define my daily life. What if upon truly waking up from the daily grind, I discover that this too was just another layer of pretense? The notion nags at me. Am I locked into one consensus worldview for reasons beyond my control, or is the entire system precisely designed, by either natural or artificial means, to keep me from straying too far? In an attempt to break free, I've tried a variety of tactics. I toy with being completely neutral, neither believing in a solid, physical universe uncritically, nor subscribing to simulation theory wholeheartedly. Why do I want neutrality so badly? Partly, it stems from a desire for intellectual honesty. I don't want to be swayed by the emotional comfort of belonging to the majority, nor do I want to be lured by the thrill of a conspiratorial worldview that might not hold up under scrutiny. Instead, I want to walk the line of genuine inquiry, like a detective who withholds conclusions until the evidence is irrefutable. Yet, I often discover that neutral ground is exceptionally hard to maintain. The moment I let my guard down, I find myself defaulting to the mainstream. Of course I'm in a real world with stable laws of physics. Of course I'm not inside a computer. Of course I'm not inside a dream. This shift back to the norm is not deliberate. It feels more like a reflex, as if some subconscious program has reasserted itself. In those moments, I feel a distinct sense of frustration, wondering, if this were truly a real world, wouldn't I be free to decide for myself what to believe? Why does it feel as if there's an enforcement of sorts, some unstoppable, hypnotic force that compels me to see the world in one standardized way? To combat this, I've turned to autohypnosis. Autohypnosis, or self-hypnosis, involves techniques that allow one to enter a trance-like state of heightened suggestibility. While in that state, you can attempt to implant positive affirmations, or in my case, instructions to remain neutral about the nature of reality. I might sit quietly, eyes half closed, breathing deeply, and repeat statements like, "I will question everything. I will not assume any worldview. I will withhold belief in both the thesis and the antithesis." For a short while after such sessions, I feel a sense of liberation, like I'm stepping out of the default illusions that govern my everyday consciousness. However, these moments of liberation rarely last. The routines of daily life, eating, working, interacting with others, seem to pull me back into the standard script. Before I know it, I'm discussing the weather forecast, as if our meteorological models are indisputably accurate representations of how things truly are, or planning future events as if time is linear and stable. All that might be correct, of course. But the trouble is how involuntary it feels. I don't consciously choose to reaffirm these beliefs. It's as if the entire environment is set up to funnel me toward them. That, in essence, is the hypnotic sensation I can't seem to shake off. Aligned with these self-hypnotic methods, I also try to employ Cartesian doubt, inspired by the philosophy of René Descartes. He advocated systematically doubting everything that can be doubted to find an undeniable foundation of certainty. This approach resonates strongly with my desire for neutrality. In theory, I should be able to say, I doubt the existence of the external world. I doubt the reliability of my senses. I doubt the nature of my memories, and so on. Until I find something that I cannot logically doubt. Maybe that undisputed foundation is the famous I think, therefore I am, or maybe I discover something else along the way. The stumbling block, however, is that after each session of Cartesian doubt, I re-emerge into the normal, day-to-day context. It's as though the very environment exerts a kind of gravitational pull on my beliefs. No matter how much I doubt when I talk to a friend or family member, or scroll through social media, or watch the news, everything in the external environment acts as if the world is definitely real in the commonly accepted sense. This interplay of internal skepticism and external social affirmation is challenging to navigate. At times, it can even feel suffocating. Although I can momentarily step outside of the matrix of normality, I get pulled back in as soon as I re-engage with the outside world. Simulation theory versus popular beliefs. Two sides of a coin. On one side, we have the popular belief. We live on Earth, orbiting the sun, in a universe that started with a Big Bang nearly 14 billion years ago. On the other side, we have simulation theory. Advanced civilizations or entities have created a highly sophisticated virtual environment, and we are conscious beings inside it, perhaps unaware that everything we see is code or artificial. One reason I find simulation theory compelling is precisely that it explains the phenomenon of always being immersed. If we are coded to accept a particular worldview, then it makes sense that we can't easily break free from that worldview. Simulation theory posits that it's not just social conditioning, but literally part of our programming to uphold this consensus. And yet, I don't want to jump to the conclusion that we are in a simulation without thorough reasoning. After all, it could also be that the so-called default worldview is correct because we are indeed in a physical, real universe. The sense of immersion might just be how living organisms experience reality from a first-person perspective. Everything in mainstream science suggests that if you're born into a stable cosmos governed by laws of nature, you will naturally adopt the perspective that the cosmos is real. But then again, if we were inside a simulated environment, we might discover the exact same pattern. Everything appears stable because that is how the simulation is coded, and we remain oblivious to it. Hence, the need for neutrality is all the more pressing. I recognize that I might be incapable of differentiating them from the inside. What really lies at the heart of this dilemma is a craving for mental autonomy, a desire to choose my beliefs rather than have them chosen for me. I suspect many people share this craving, whether they phrase it in terms of simulation skepticism or not. There is a universal desire to be in control of one's worldview, rather than a passive recipient of it. If this world were truly real, in the sense that it is open, unbounded, and free, then in my mind, I would be able to adopt or reject beliefs at will. There wouldn't be an invisible pressure funneling me into one perspective. Yet, the inescapable feeling is that there is such a pressure. The pressure doesn't come in the form of a secret government agent or any external authority telling me, believe in mainstream science or else. Instead, it's more like a deep-seated psychological or existential tide. When I'm around family, we talk about everyday stuff. Grocery shopping, birthdays, paying bills. There is no room for radical doubt in these conversations, because the entire structure of life presupposes the reality of the environment. I don't blame them. nor do I blame myself. It's simply how social existence functions. And that's precisely why it feels so hypnotic, like a group induction session that lulls everyone into the same trance. Is everything hypnotic? In an update to my initial reflections, I observed that it may not be a simulation, but it's surely hypnotic. It feels like everything is hypnotic. This is an important point. Even if we assume the conventional worldview is correct, and we are not inside a grand cosmic illusion run by some advanced programmer, we still can't deny the feeling of being hypnotized. For me, this refers to the all-pervasive sense that I'm immersed without conscious choice. If I walk through a city and see the same signs, the same advertisements, the same shapes of architecture repeated ad nauseum, it's as though the environment itself is consistent with a specific story of what the world is. This story is consistent from one block to the next, from one conversation to the next, from one news channel to the next. It may be perfectly normal from a sociological or psychological perspective. Human beings, after all, share symbolic languages and cultural norms. However, the fact that it's so seamless triggers a sense of wonder. Is this seamlessness evidence that everything is natural and real, or that I'm inside an elaborate set of illusions? The mesmerizing uniformity across people's assumptions, the near absolute agreement on foundational points. Of course that building is real, of course time is passing, of course the sun is up there and we revolve around it. These moments feed the sense of a hypnotic environment. It's as though every single aspect of my daily life is orchestrated to keep me anchored in one unwavering perspective. One way I relate this phenomenon to other experiences is by drawing a parallel with religious upbringings. Imagine someone who grows up in a deeply devout household or community. Their entire life is oriented around certain religious truths, a specific deity, a specific narrative of creation, moral rules, and more. For them, it's not a matter of consciously choosing to believe. It's as though they've never known anything else. Over time, they might question these beliefs, but the immersive nature of their environment can make it challenging to leave or adopt another worldview. Their entire social circle, their sense of identity, their traditions, everything is enmeshed in that belief system. This can be hypnotic in its own way, because stepping out of it requires an enormous break with the environment. Is mainstream secular reality any different? Perhaps we don't talk about gods and prophets, but we talk about the laws of physics, the cosmic timeline, the structure of matter, and the daily rituals of modern life. Work, entertainment, consumption, politics, etc. We treat all of these as givens. Even though there's a difference in content, the psychological effect might be quite similar. Whether it's a religious worldview or a mainstream scientific worldview, the shared consensus acts like a net that is hard to escape. Could a real world accommodate true diversity of belief? One question that fuels my fascination with this topic is, if our world is indeed real in some absolute sense, wouldn't it allow for a true diversity of beliefs without forcibly immersing people in a single perspective? Some might argue that it does. After all, we have hundreds of religions, philosophies, and subcultures. The world is indeed quite varied. Still, at a deeper level, there's a bedrock consensus. We all more or less share the same physical reality. Even people of radically different faiths can agree that gravity works the same everywhere, that if you jump off a high ledge you'll likely fall, or that you should be careful crossing a busy street, because physical objects like cars can cause harm. In a way, the existence of this hard floor on what we call reality fosters a sense of universal immersion that's nearly impossible to shrug off. No matter your personal convictions, a portion of the environment remains unwaveringly consistent and exerts an influence on how we think. Is that a sign that the environment is genuinely real, or that it's a meticulously programmed simulation? Or is it simply the outcome of natural laws we have yet to fully comprehend? Whichever the case, it's equally mesmerizing, like a stage that never changes, demanding that all actors abide by certain rules if they want to remain on the stage at all. Returning to the question of evaluation, all I want is to believe neither in the thesis, that everything is real in the simplest sense, nor the antithesis, that it's all a simulation, at least until I can thoroughly weigh each perspective. But as I've explained, something about daily life keeps commandeering my mind, driving me back to the default position. It's not that I'm told, you must believe, but rather it's that my lived experience falls in line with that default without me even noticing. By the time I have half a day's worth of normal errands and interactions behind me, the possibility of a simulated environment starts to feel distant, like a fleeting fancy or mental exercise, rather than something to be seriously considered. Yet, the curiosity never fully disappears. It returns, often late at night, or in quieter moments when I'm not bombarded by tasks and responsibilities. I might be staring at the stars or reading a philosophical text when it strikes me again. What if we are immersed in something akin to a dream? What if there's no strong reason to prefer one explanation over another? These intervals of doubt are precious. They make me feel that perhaps the mind can, indeed, step outside the default narrative. Still, they are fleeting, and I haven't found a permanent way to dwell in that neutrality. Another layer to this struggle is the recognition of the limits of rational inquiry. Even if I adopt Cartesian doubt, I might conclude something along the lines of, I exist in some capacity, but everything else might be illusions. That doesn't conclusively tell me which illusions are objectively real illusions, if that phrase makes sense, and which illusions are artificially created by a higher intelligence or an advanced technology. I can gather evidence, consistent laws of physics, historical records, scientific explanations. But that's all consistent with either a real physical universe or a cleverly programmed simulation. If the simulation is thorough enough, it can produce the illusions of historical artifacts, cosmic background radiation, quantum phenomena, and even the illusions of new scientific discoveries each year, all to maintain the sense of a living, evolving universe. This recognition highlights the possibility that from within a system, you can't definitively prove whether that system is fundamental reality or an elaborate facade. We might be able to poke holes or notice anomalies if the simulation is poorly designed. But if it's robust, we're stuck. That knowledge alone can create a sense of existential unease. It's not that I prefer one conclusion over another. I simply want the freedom to dwell in uncertainty without feeling forced by environment, habit, or social consensus back into the mainstream comfort zone. There's an emotional side to all of this that's worth mentioning. Constantly questioning the nature of reality can be unsettling. It can manifest in anxiety, existential dread, or a sense of alienation. On the other hand, it can also be thrilling. Some days I feel a wave of excitement. What if everything is an illusion, and I can transcend it somehow? There's a sense of empowerment in that line of thinking, yet the more common feeling is frustration. Why frustration? Because I can't seem to maintain that vantage point long enough to glean any conclusive insights. Additionally, there is a social dimension to this frustration. If I voice these doubts too openly, I risk alienating people who prefer simpler or more concrete ways of thinking. Many friends or family might say, "Why complicate life? Just accept what's in front of you." But to me, that feels like sleeping through a puzzle that's right there to be solved, or at least acknowledged. The tension between wanting to belong, and thus share in the normal worldview, and wanting to question everything, potentially appearing odd or disconnected, is another form of pressure that drives me back to the mainstream perspective. Some might label these concerns as purely philosophical or existential navel-gazing, but to me, they strike at the core of what it means to be free in one's consciousness. Given this persistent conundrum, I'm always on the lookout for practical ways to handle it. Autohypnosis and Cartesian doubt are two approaches I've already mentioned. Journaling is another. I keep a notebook or digital document in which I try to record my experiences of slipping in and out of doubt. By reading these entries later, I can track when and why I fall back into mainstream assumptions. Sometimes I notice patterns. It might happen after a stressful day, or after I've been immersed in conversation with people who strongly assert the normal worldview. Identifying these triggers can help me realize that my return to normal might just be a coping mechanism rather than a genuine conclusion. Meditation is yet another avenue. During mindfulness or deep meditation, I focus on my immediate sensations, my breath, the ambient sounds, the weight of my body on the chair or floor. In those quiet moments, I let go of stories about the world being real or unreal. Instead, I focus on the direct experience of being here, being present. Interestingly, such meditation can reduce the tension I feel about which worldview is correct, because for a moment, I'm not adopting any worldview at all. I'm just experiencing. That might be the closest I get to genuine neutrality, albeit fleetingly all. After all these reflections, I find myself at a crossroads. The statement, "A real world would allow me to believe whatever I want," captures a longing for absolute freedom of mind. I yearn for a space where I can experiment with both the thesis and the antithesis without feeling inevitably dragged back into one side. Yet, the reality, whatever that may be, does not seem to grant me that total freedom. Instead, it has a mesmerizing pull, a hypnotic effect that keeps me orbiting around popular beliefs. The sense that it must be real because everyone else acts like it is, or it must be real because my senses confirm the same consistent environment day after day, is difficult to resist. Maybe that is a sign that the mainstream worldview is correct. Or maybe it's a testament to how compelling illusions can be if they're perfectly designed. Ultimately, I remain committed to evaluating both possibilities. Perhaps I'll never find conclusive proof that we are in or out of a simulation. Perhaps that's simply the nature of existence. We are left to interpret ambiguous evidence from within the system we are trying to comprehend. The best I can do for now is continue my internal practices: autohypnosis, Cartesian doubt, meditation, journaling, while acknowledging that full neutrality might always be an elusive dream. Even if it is elusive, I believe the attempt matters. Striving for freedom in one's thought, even if never fully achievable, might yield a richer understanding of both ourselves and the universe, real or simulated. In the meantime, life goes on. I still have to pay my bills, manage my relationships, and handle the day-to-day minutiae that come with being human. The world, real or otherwise, offers the same challenges and joys no matter which perspective I hold. I still marvel at sunsets, still experience love and friendship, still worry about the future. Perhaps that's the ultimate irony. Whether or not we are in a simulation, the emotional and experiential tapestry of life remains. And maybe that's the bigger point, that beyond the question of, is it real, stands the question of, how do I engage meaningfully with it? Whether I'm hypnotized or not, whether it's a grand cosmic computer or an objective, physical universe, I can still seek meaning, connection, and growth. There might lie the truest neutrality of all, recognizing that the puzzle of existence can be explored but never fully solved, and that living authentically within that mystery is what life is all about.